Sam never imagined he'd find himself back in Grover's Creek. The small Texas town with its dusty roads, weather-beaten buildings had been a little more than a backdrop to his childhood, a place he'd long since left behind. But life had a way of pulling you back to where you'd least wanted to go. When his father fell sick, Sam found himself making the reluctant journey back to the old farmhouse where he'd grown up. The house looked almost exactly as it had when he left nearly a decade ago. The same creaky porch greeted him, the paint peeling a little bit more and the wood had been weathered. Inside, the familiar smell of old wood and dust filled his nostrils. The furniture was the same, worn but sturdy, like it was holding onto the past with the same stubbornness as the house itself. Sam's father, now confined to a bed in the living room, looked up at him with tired eyes. "I didn't think you'd come back," he gasped. Sam forced a smile. "I didn't think I'd have to, Dad." They didn't talk much after that. There wasn't much to say. The weight of unspoken words hung between them, too heavy to lift. Instead, Sam had busied himself with the house, fixing what he could, trying to make the place feel like home again, even though it never really had. During Sam's stay, he decided to reach out to some of his old friends. He didn't really keep in touch with any of his friends from Grover's Creek, but he figured it wouldn't hurt to reach out and see if anyone was still around. It wasn't long before one of his friends, Charlie, showed up on the front doorstep, grinning, as if they were still kids. "Man, it's good to see you," Charlie said, slapping Sam on the back. "We've got some serious catching up to do." They spent the afternoon on the porch, catching up on the years that had passed since Sam had left. Charlie hadn't changed much. Still the same easygoing guy with the knack of making even the most mundane stories sound interesting. But there was something else in his eyes, something that hadn't been there before, a shadow of something unsaid. Their conversation drifted to the old days, to the games they used to play, the trouble they used to get into, and inevitably it turned to the barn. "Remember the games we used to play in there?" Charlie asked, his tone light and his eyes serious. Sam nodded. A knot in his stomach was forming. "Hide and seek? We practically lived in that barn." The barn had been their playground, their sanctuary. It was where they spent countless hours playing games, sharing secrets, and just being kids. But there was one game they never spoke of, one that had ended in Emily's disappearance. Emily had been a part of their group, a bright, fearless, and could outclimb any of the boys, and wasn't afraid of anything, until she was gone. The police had searched for weeks, but all they ever found was her bike, laying on its side near the edge of the woods. "Let's go check it out," Charlie suggested, pulling Sam from his thoughts. Sam hesitated. The barn had always felt different after Emily had vanished, but curiosity got the better of him. "Sure," Sam said. The barn stood just as it did all those years ago, though the wood was more weathered and the roof had sagged in places. As they stepped inside, the familiar smell of hay brought back some memories. The light filtered through the gaps in the wooden slats, casting long shadows across the floor. They wandered through the barn. Memories of their childhood games played through their minds. But as they reached the back, something caught Sam's eye. A spot in the hay that looked disturbed, like there had been something there or something had been moved. "What's this?" Sam asked, pointing it out to Charlie. Charlie frowned. "It doesn't look like much. Maybe there was an animal here or something." But Sam couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more. He knelt down and began sifting through the hay. At first it was just loose straw, but then his fingers brushed up against something hard. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. "Charlie, help me with this," he said, his voice trembling. Together they continued to dig deeper into the hay, until they finally uncovered something that looked like human bones. Sam's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the skeleton remains, half buried into the dirt. "Oh my God," Charlie whispered, stepping backwards. "Is that—" But Sam knew. He recognized the small necklace, tarnished with age, that laid among the bones. It was Emily's. The necklace she had worn every day since they were kids. The one she was wearing the day she disappeared. Suddenly, Memories Sam had long forgotten came flooding back. Playing in the barn, hearing Emily's laughter echoing off the walls, and then nothing. A blank space where there should have been new memories, replaced with a cold, creeping dread. "We have to call the sheriff," Charlie said, shaking. But Sam couldn't move. His mind raced as he tried to piece together what had happened all those years ago. The barn, the games, Emily's disappearance. It all led back to this moment. Had they somehow been involved without realizing it? Or was there something else more sinister at play in this Grover's Creek? As they were about to make a move, sound echoed through the barn, a low creaking like a groan of an old door. Sam's heart raced as he and Charlie turned towards the source. The barn door, which they had left wide open, was slowly closing in on its own. "Sam, we need to get out of here," Charlie said, grabbing his friend's arm. But Sam couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. He looked back at the bones, then around the barn. It was as if the walls were closing in on them, the weight of the walls finally coming back to crush them. As they stumbled out of the barn and into the fading light of the evening, Sam's mind was a whirlpool of thoughts. The discovery of Emily's remains, the memories that had resurfaced, the creeping sense that something had been watching them. It was all too much. But one thing was clear, however. The past had come back to haunt them. The Grover's Creek was no longer just a sleepy little town. It was a place where secrets were buried deep, and some things were just never meant to be uncovered. Thanks for listening. Subscribe for more thrilling stories.